Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy summer, brothers and sisters. We are officially now on the calendar and the first day of summer. Wishing you a beautiful summer season. And we have much to discuss here on a Friday morning edition of EWTN's Catholic Connection. And right off the gate, or out of the gate, I should say, after the news and the weather, we will check in with our good friend Doug Keck, our President and Chief Operating Officer, with the inside word for EWTN and all kinds of great programs, of course, that we're working on and that will be airing for you. And, of course, Corpus Christi weekend, pretty big stuff. And then we're going to have two segments of Fact Check Friday. I'm expanding it because there's so much to discuss, so many important stories. And so I'm bringing out my little sis, Vanessa Denha-Garmo, and we're going to discuss a number of issues, the latest on the Terry Moran controversy. And Bill Maher, as leftist as he is saying that Bill Moran is wrong in saying that there's nothing wrong with a reporter putting their opinions out there about people that they interview. And I think it's very telling. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how does someone who works for a news operation, now the news operation is saying they let him go because they stand for objectivity. That can't be the case because there's no way he would be so comfortable in putting something like that, the rant against Trump and Stephen Miller, on X for everybody to see on social media, unless he felt empowered by management. So we're going to talk about that, and also from Vanessa's coaching perspective, how the attitudes and the actions of people at the top of any organization permeate down, and how you can have a positive or a negative impact. We'll discuss that, plus several other news stories. And then we're going to take a look at the movie Nonas. Did you hear about this movie? I was so excited to watch it because it's on Netflix, and I did watch it. And it's actually in part based on a true story. There's a man who lamented the fact that he didn't learn enough from his mother in terms of cooking. He's Italian. And so he took all of her recipes and decided he was going to start a restaurant with her recipes and the recipes of other nonas or grandmothers in New York. And he did that. And so they made a movie out of it. Now, for the most part, it's a pretty clean, charming movie. But there is, of course, they have to slip in the gay agenda, and it's a direct attack the church. At least that's how I took it. So we'll discuss that. And overall, it was, I think, a pretty fun movie, but there always has to be something like that. Why? Just leave it alone. Just talk about the story, the life. And it was just really cool the way they brought these different women together in the movie, and very good actresses, by the way, bringing them together. And they were all playing these Italian grandmothers. And actually, all of them are Italian. They're Italian-American, the actresses, except for Susan Sarandon. But they were very, fun to watch, and the way they mixed with each other and whatnot. And then they had to bring the thing in, the gay agenda. Why? Why, please, Hollywood? So anyway, we'll discuss that, plus some other news stories that are making headlines as well. And that will be for two segments in the first hour of our program. Now, the lead story this morning is so amazing. It just gave me the chills, and it got me all choked up. And we're going to dive into that story about this scientist considered the most intelligent man in the world, according to his IQ, who is professing his Christian faith and has gone on social media to tell the entire world as well. And so Richard and I found a really cool video that dove into a little bit more of the explanation. And so we're going to share that with you next hour. But again, in the first hour, we have Doug Keck. We have Fact Check Friday with T&V. And that is our first hour of the program. So I think you're going to enjoy it. At least I hope you will. Let's see if we're going to enjoy the weather this weekend across America. It's very hot here in Italy. We're in the 90s now. Severe storms in the northern plains and upper Midwest, critical fire weather in the west, and dangerous heat in the central part of the country. Severe thunderstorms are likely today across the northern plains and into the upper Mississippi Valley. Gusty winds and dry conditions will result in widespread critical fire weather through tomorrow, and this is across parts of the Four Corners region and the Great Basin. A significant and dangerous heat wave will expand from the central U.S. into the eastern U.S. this weekend through much of next week. So that is a look at the weather, and also, as we say in the biz, our rundown for today. It's 4 minutes past the hour right now, though. It's always busy news-wise, so we need to look at the news on a Friday morning, June 20th, the first day of summer here on EWTN. As we mentioned, we'll be discussing this in more detail with a cool video, well, the audio version, obviously, because this is radio, on this story coming up. Catholic News Agency posted this story this morning. Check it out. It's amazing. The man with the highest reported IQ in the world gaining attention worldwide after publicly proclaiming his Christianity on social media. On June 17th, South Korean scientist Young-hoon Kim, who claims he has an IQ of 276, the highest IQ ever recorded, posting on X, as a world's highest IQ record holder, I believe that Jesus Christ is God, the way, the truth, and the life. Yes! His post has received 14 million views and 250,000 likes as of yesterday. His claim to being the world's highest IQ record holder has been verified by organizations including Mensa, World Memory Championships, World Memory Sports Council, in partnership with Guinness World Records and Official World Record. Kim, as CNA reports, responding to the tremendous popularity of his original post, said in another X post yesterday, he will use the opportunity to lead many souls to God. Amen, he says. Christ is my logic. He's 36 years old. The Catholic Church, of course, as CNA explains, teaches that God's existence can be known through reason alone. As stated in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph number 36, God, the first principle and last end of all things, can be known with certainty from the created world by the natural light of human reason. His post has received, get this, 14 million views and 250,000 likes as of yesterday. His claim to being the world's highest IQ record holder has been verified, again, by organizations such as Mensa and the other organizations we mentioned. Wow. He also founded the United Sigma Intelligence Association and is on the board of Lifeboat Foundation, which promotes scientific advancements while mitigating human risks from technologies such as AI. Wouldn't it be cool if he sat down with Pope Leo? I'm just thinking that might happen. I don't know. I'm just thinking. Well, let's pray about that, please. And speaking of Pope Leo XIV, speaking of God and science, encouraging young astronomy students at the Vatican this week to be generous in sharing what you learn and what you experience as best you can and however you can. Surely, he said, this must be an exciting time to be an astronomer. Pope Leo said to the scholars at the Vatican this week, the students gathering as part of a month-long astronomy and astrophysics summer school program hosted by the Vatican Observatory. Now, where students come from across the globe to take part. The observatory only accepts a small group of students in their final year of undergraduate studies or their first year of graduate school. Each summer, as CNA tells us, a program has a different theme and area of study. This year's group is exploring the universe with information from the James Webb Space Telescope, which is currently the largest telescope in space, Pope Leo calling it a truly remarkable instrument, according to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. He says, for the first time, we are able to peer deeply into the atmosphere of planets where life may be developing and study where planetary systems themselves are forming. He added, the authors of sacred scripture writing so many centuries ago did not have the benefit of this privilege, yet their poetic and religious imagination pondered what the moment of creation must have been like. In other news this morning, Andrew Whitman tells us yesterday's afternoon storms that swept through the tri-state area on the East Coast did some damage, and not just to trees and power lines.
2 people were struck by lightning Thursday afternoon in Manhattan as the storm blew through. The first person was hit around 3:40 Thursday afternoon in East Harlem, happened at East 101st Street and 5th Avenue. That person was hospitalized. There's no word on their condition. 5 minutes later at 3:45, a 15-year-old boy was hit by lightning in Central Park at 100th Street and the East Drive. Lightning hit a tree, then the teen. He was also hospitalized. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
The White House saying President Trump has a time frame for when he will make his decision about possible U.S. intervention in the Iran-Israel conflict.
I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
That's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who says there is a chance for diplomacy. The president will grab it if there is. There's been wide speculation and rumors whether the president will authorize the use of bunker-busting bombs to take out Iranian nuke facilities. The president has long maintained Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. A rescue operation flight, meanwhile, carrying evacuated Jewish Americans from Israel is landing safely in Miami. Judy Elias with Heroes to Heroes was in the middle of a 10-day mission with a group of 33 veterans who had to go to the Jordanian border to get a flight out.
It was a pretty harrowing experience. My major concern was getting all of my veterans home safely.
She says it was chaotic, but they did manage to make it onto the plane after a 60-hour travel ordeal. The group had been in shelter since sirens began sounding last Tuesday. Amid Iranian strikes, Governor Ron DeSantis is helping to coordinate flights and cruises for stranded residents who are still there. A federal appeals court, as Tammy Trujillo tells us, is ruling in favor of the Trump administration regarding the deployment of the California National Guard.
The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says the president is within his rights to deploy troops amid protests in Southern California over immigration raids. The ruling by the three-judge panel allows nearly 4,000 National Guard troops to remain deployed in Los Angeles. Governor Newsom sued the president over his decision to deploy the California Guard. Last week, a federal judge agreed with Newsom and ruled that Trump's actions were illegal. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
The White House says sanctuary cities will be increasingly targeted by ICE. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also speaking on behalf of the president yesterday, saying he is securing the homeland, noting that a single illegal alien was released into the U.S. last month. She added Homeland Security is ramping up efforts to arrest and deport the millions of illegal aliens that former President Biden let in. There were initial anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles when the immigration operation began, but they have since died down. Local authorities want to prosecute the man accused of shooting two Minnesota legislators before the feds do. Vance Bolter was charged by both offices on Monday for the murder of House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. He's also accused of shooting State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. Local attorneys Mary Moriarty in Minnesota have asked the DOJ to let her office be first to pursue murder charges against the suspect. The acting U.S. Attorney, John Thompson, said it's his expectation the federal case will go first. And just over a month after Pope Leo XIV became the first U.S.-born pontiff in the history of the Catholic Church, there's a new poll showing that American Catholics are feeling very excited about their new pontiff. About two-thirds of American Catholics have a very or somewhat favorable view of the Holy Father. That's according to a new survey from the Associated Press and the Center for Public Affairs Research. Well, about 3 in 10 don't know enough, they say, to have an opinion yet. Very few Catholics, less than 1 in 10, view him unfavorably. And speaking of the Holy Father, the Pope continues to prove just how big of a White Sox fan he is. Pope Leo XIV started taking part in a White Sox chant earlier this week. This is on Wednesday after the audience as he rode through Vatican City in the Pope-mobile.
White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox!
The Chicago native is a confirmed fan of the Southsiders, the Archdiocese of Chicago, holding a celebration for him this past weekend at the home of the White Sox. And finally, in our news segment, almost ready to wrap up the news. Today is the first day of summer. Yay! The summer solstice falls on June 20th in the U.S., and here in Europe, tomorrow, the 21st. That's when the Earth achieves its maximum tilt toward the sun, making it the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere and kicking off the official start of summer. Thank you, Jesus, my favorite time of year. We'll be right back. Doug Keck joins us up next. Stay tuned. It's June 20th, 2025. We appreciate your listenership here at EWTN. Catholic Connection comes to you every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And then the second hour of the show is broadcast on the EWTN Radio Extra channel. You can also hear both hours on the app. And please go to EWTN.com for all the information. Every Friday, we do a segment. We've been doing this for years now with Doug Keck. It's called The Inside Word. And what we do is we look at programming that's coming up in the next few days, in the next week or so, special maybe programs or films that they're broadcasting in the month of which we're speaking, just to kind of give you an idea of the things that are coming up, because there's so much great programming and it's hard to kind of remember everything. So I kind of like to have Doug, as we have been doing, review that for us. And the good news is, even though he is semi-retiring at the end of the month, he's still going to be doing this segment with him. So I'm really, really thrilled about that. Good morning, my friend. How are you? Happy summer.
Yeah, happy summer. Yeah, I've been relegated to a phone call now. How quickly things change. That's what it is. Oh, boy, I tell you. It doesn't take long.
Did they give you the box to pack up your office yet, or you're doing that next?
What office? So I went there, was sealed up.
I had nothing to do with the phone call today. Apparently, there was some technical issues in Birmingham. That Richard told me we got hit by lightning yesterday, I guess, and that caused
I can imagine. Yeah,
problems.
Really
but anyway, we're glad to have you. So I'm excited about sharing the great interview we did. We're going to air that on Monday. All right, so here we are at the end of June, moving into, of course, a big weekend, Corpus Christi weekend. What's coming up on the network?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to jump right to that. I mean, we've got 2 new Eucharistic devotionals programs for Corpus Christi airing tomorrow. We have Alive in Christ, which is a new edition of that, which focuses on the Eucharistic martyrs of the early church, and it's Ignatius of Antioch and Justin Martyr. So you can check that out at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and then again at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. Also, another one we're proud of, His Body and Blood. It's Franciscan Saints on the Eucharist, which was produced by our team. And it focuses on, because of our Franciscan basis for EWTN with Mother Angelica, we thought it was important to show the connection to St. Francis of Assisi and St. Clare and the other St. Padre Pio, and the importance of the Eucharist and Eucharistic devotion is played in the lives of the Franciscans over the years. So we're thrilled about this program. We also have another program our friends the CFRs put together called Brother, which talks about their work in New Jersey and the power of faith in action. So we've got a whole series of wonderful programs, especially those on the Eucharist. We also have a program because, the Feast of St. Thomas More is coming up on the 22nd. So we have a program that Dr. Gerard Wegemer did on a hero for our time, St. Thomas More. In many ways he is. So many things today we think about someone like him in the political realm standing up and putting his life on the line and ultimately giving it up to stand up for his faith, that kind of a thing, putting God first over king. So that's another program we're going to be airing, and that will be on the 21st, so you can look for that as well. And that's tomorrow, believe it or not, because obviously it's already summer, I guess. And then we've got also the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament on Sunday. We've got the body, Corpus Christi, body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus. And so we've got our event happening from Hanceville, as we always do. So we have that event at 10 a.m. Eastern Time because it's so important to the sisters. And then also the celebration, we're airing slightly tape delayed from the Shrine in Washington, D.C., and also there's also the Solemn Mass of Corpus Christi in procession in Rome, which we're going to be airing on Sunday night at 7. We've also got a wonderful program from the National Shrine of St. John Neumann because of his 50th anniversary of his canonization, so that'll be happening as well. And speaking of the Eucharist, we got the closing Mass of the National Eucharistic Pilgrimage on Sunday at 9:30. And so there's all those programs. And we've got programs having to do with the honoring the Jubilee of Seminarians coming up next week, a bunch of series of programs airing on that. And we also have a Holy Hour for young Catholics with young Catholic professionals, and that's an event that's happening with our Franciscans for a televised Holy Hour on the 24th. And again, we've got the Jubilee of Bishops. I mean, there's just so many things rolling together, obviously, here in the month of June. And, of course, EWTN is the place to be. EWTN.com for all the information. Check out our on-demand platform. Of course, our YouTube channel, ever expanding, more and more being put on there. Some new programs, some new specific to the web programs. And also, as always, from our Podcast Central in our Radio Land. You can check that out. That's also ever expanding, thanks to Tom Price, keeping and looking around to find the best in Catholic programming.
So much with St. Francis and his understanding of the Eucharist, because often, as you know, he gets relegated to just being about the environment. And living here so close to Assisi and so many other places that he touched, such as Gubbio and Spoleto and all these other places he visited, where he had the Stigmata, Laverna up in Tuscany, not too far from Florence. You learn so much about him when you kind of dig in and you do some of the local, talk to the local people. And I don't know if a lot of people realize when he was told by God to rebuild the church, yes, he did think that physically it meant rebuilding that particular church. But then what he did is he expanded it not just to grow the faith, but and this is Father Joseph Mary told me this a while ago, he said that Francis really believed that the churches had to look right and be in good condition because of Jesus in the Eucharist. So he was rebuilding the church, not only obviously through disciples, but he was working on the physical locations and making sure these churches were in good shape, at least that they were clean and acceptable. So there's a lot more to St. Francis than people think, and I'm really glad you're doing this.
Right, and Father Joseph, and also I think Father Pascal, both of our priests, are featured in this documentary as well. So it's interesting you bring up what Father Joseph had to say. Exactly. I think it's so important, as you say. You get these kind of, the Donovan hippie-like Sister Moon, Brother Sun, kind of eco version of Catholicism. And instead of understanding the deeper theological understandings of what was being said and what was being relayed, even by those things relating to taking care and being good stewards of the earth, which is, of course, what we have to do. But why do we do it? It's because we love God and because God has given this part of our mission to do, along with a lot of other things. It's not, you just don't go and say, well, which one of these, it's a cafeteria, I'm going to sign up for eco work, and I'm not going to worry about the rest of this stuff. And, we see that all of this is driven by the Eucharist. And again, we've seen almost everywhere, certainly mothers, how did the EWTN grow? I mean, it spread the truth of Christ, and its central locale, its locus is the Eucharist, and always was Eucharistic adoration. And as we've spoken, any place you go where there's Eucharistic adoration, you see renewal. Any place you go and see, devotion to the Sacred Heart, obviously this month, or devotion to Divine Mercy. Again, now you see the church flourishing, you see vocations flourishing, and it's in a lot of ways it's a battle, because there are those whose version and view of the church was totally antithetical to that, and that's why sometimes when you wonder whether it couldn't be even the Tridentine Mass or whatever, like, well, if it's working and you're reaching people, why are you trying to stamp it out or marginalize it? Isn't your goal to ultimately, see the church healthier and growing, or is it for you to be right?
And I just think it's so powerful to have these different voices and these different programs who are explaining this, because you get, I think, such a depth that you're not going to get anywhere else. And again, the secular media and the culture just want to make him out to be, as you said, Donovan, that shows how old you and I are. I immediately thought of the song Mellow Yellow. It popped into my head because I remember that. But no, that's so true. The hippie, make me a channel of your peace, blah, blah, blah. Right. Okay, but there's so much more to it. And speaking of that, I wanted to, again, thank you and your team for the opportunity of doing the Saints in Italy Learn series, because we have a whole segment from Orvieto on the Eucharist, and that's EWTN.com/Saints in Italy, and it's free. Doug, thanks so much. Make sure you get a big enough box, because I'm sure after so many years you got lots of good stuff to put in there. And we'll talk on Monday. I'm so excited about airing the interview we did. And I promise next time it'll be on Comrex. We love you and always will. We'll be right back.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Seven minutes past the hour. It is a Friday, June 20th. It is the first day of summer in your part of the world. Here in Europe, it will be the first day of summer tomorrow. I don't know why they do that differently, but oh well. It's summertime anyway. We're happy about it. I know I am. Welcome back, and I'm very excited to do an expanded edition of Fact Check Friday this morning with my friend Vanessa Denha-Garmo, and she and I work together on the streets of Detroit, but let's clarify, as reporters. It does tend to sound very weird when we say that. We always have to clarify, but we work side by side for years as secular journalists in Detroit, which is still one of the top major markets in the country, and we took very seriously our role as reporters and always striving. Not that we always were perfect, but we certainly did our best to strive for objectivity. Unfortunately, that is pretty much gone for the most part from the secular media. One of the biggest glaring examples of this, and V's going to be with us for 2 segments, this segment and the next, because there's a ton of news for Fact Check Friday. Vanessa, you and I were chatting back and forth about Terry Moran, the former ABC a huge correspondent, had been there for something like 24 years and was doing anchoring and a lot of reporting, especially on the White House. And he, for some reason, went on this tirade on X about 2 weeks ago, and it eventually cost him his job. He was first suspended, and then he was let go eventually. But then just recently, V, he does an interview, his first interview, and he doubles down saying he literally said this, reporters don't have to be objective. Were you surprised by that?
Reporters, T. That is, you could be, like you're here from Bill Maher, you could be any profession but a journalist and post something like that. Because your whole point of being a journalist is to be objective. Right. And then he's not a reporter and he's not a journalist. He's an activist. And just say what it is. Stop calling yourself something that you're not acting like. And this is where you lose credibility. And they don't understand. Their viewers have shrunk so much in the past 5 years and the 10 years, but they double down on their agenda. And it's amazing.
We're going to play this clip. And this is Bill Maher, who is very much to the left, right? At least he will listen. He does have, I think, some common sense and makes some really good points. But if Bill Maher can get the fact that Moran shouldn't have been doing this on X, why can't Moran? Take a listen to this clip from Bill Maher commenting on Terry Moran going crazy on X and attacking Trump and Stephen Miller. Take a listen.
Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater. You can see this just by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. This guy's a reporter. This is,
lots of jobs. Lots of jobs you can have and put that tweet out. Journalism is not one of them.
Exactly.
Journalism is not one of them.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Lots of jobs you can have and do that. That is the one job. I'm looking at you to be impartial. Just give me the facts. Just give me... I don't need to know this from you, Terry Moran.
Exactly, V. Bill Maher, of all people, gets it.
Yeah, exactly. Any job, a lot of jobs will allow you to speak freely, but journalism is not one of them, because you're supposed to be objective, T. And that's what people want from you. But this is why they think they're so confident, keep calling Trump voters sick, because they've made no attempt, T, to really understand anything outside their internal bubble, right? And it's really affecting the industry. They feel validated by reading the same, limited perspectives of social media. I was talking to a friend about this, a former journalist, and, he was agrees with the way we look at this. It's it's the big reason so many of them don't understand why their industry is shrinking, and what's going on in the world. But they're living in their own bubble, and they don't seek to understand other people's perspective. They have no self-awareness or no introspection. And they're scratching their heads, but doubling down on their agenda.
What to me is so interesting about this is ABC News says the reason they suspended him in the first place, because if you recall, he was suspended first, but then they came out and let him go. They didn't renew his contract, is because they claim to stand by. They're all about objectivity and they're all about balance, which is baloney, because there is no way, Vanessa, and you and I know this, and you know this as a coach, and you coach executives and middle-level executives and all kinds of people in the workplace. It's a big part of your ministry. It starts at the top. People don't feel empowered, or they wouldn't do something so freely and so strongly, and something as gives so much exposure as someone who's a national correspondent on an international social media outlet as X, unless he felt empowered and didn't think he was going to be called to task for it, right?
100%, T. Everything starts from the top down. It trickles down. The executives, the leadership, they set the tone, the culture for companies. They set the culture, the tone of the culture. And so if they communicate in a certain way and behave in a certain way, people will imitate that. It's like children imitating their parents. And they're going to feel empowered because they're going to try to win favor with the leadership. So if they believe that leadership doesn't like certain people or talks about certain people, they're going to be more, bold in their commentary and feel confident about it. They're going to send emails and tweet and text and make comments because they know they're in line with what their bosses believe or what the leadership believes, and they know that nothing's going to happen to them. So if ABC or any of the other media outlets set a tone that you have to be objective, that we don't want to know your opinion, he would never been feeling free to tweet that in the first place. He obviously felt like nothing was going to happen to him.
But you know why this is, and you and I were talking about this, because you and I know, having spent so many years in the secular media, that next to the liberal agenda, the biggest agenda, and I think sometimes it's almost equal, is money. And they just settled a lawsuit, ABC, with Trump, but last year over the whole Stephanopoulos controversy. And they know that, oh my goodness, this just proves that we really are biased. And so we have to come out and we have to, make all these claims that we're all about fairness and yada, yada, yada. When at the end of the day, they're really not, because it wouldn't have happened with Stephanopoulos either, who wrongly accused Trump of rape. That wouldn't have happened if they didn't feel, again, like they were going to be able to get away with it. But once money talks, and you see this at the other networks as well, where people have been fired recently, it's because people realize that, and look at CBS News, right? They're trying to claim now that they're working on objectivity. The bottom line is that they're really not, but they're doing is they're using these people like the Terry Morans as scapegoats.
Exactly, and the lack of objectivity has been prevalent for a long time now, for at least 10 years. I mean, there were reports and polls about this, right? And Pew and Gallup polls saying, editors or executives, producers didn't think that objectivity was necessary or getting both sides of the story. We knew that's how they felt. But now they're feeling it by their pocketbook. And we've talked about this for years. We didn't understand how they can continue in this business model and keep going, you know what I mean? Because they were losing viewership, and when you lose viewership, you lose advertising dollars. And so, you always, follow the money in so many different ways. That's, we knew that as reporters. So, now they're feeling it in the pocketbook, and now they're trying to backtrack and say, oh, no, we're objective. We get both sides of the story. But if they did, why do their reporters feel so confident and bold to give their commentary, their opinions about politics and Trump and the right? I mean, they're not even seeking to understand why people voted for Trump. They don't even want to know. They just want to attack. It's like they're not doing their jobs as a reporter and saying, what is it about Trump that you like? Why did you vote for him? Why is he the president? I mean, ask those questions and seek to understand where they're coming from instead of just pushing your agenda.
Absolutely. And how could he sit there, Terry Moran, and say that objectivity, what doesn't matter, when his own company puts out a statement saying they're all about objectivity and balance? Communication, what we have here is a problem. We'll be right back. More on the media in our extended Fact Check Friday segment with Vanessa Denha-Garmo. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. We're doing an expanded version of Fact Check Friday. V and I, for years, locally in Michigan, did a segment called In the News with T and V. And this is very similar to that, where we dive into these stories. And the reason we started this is because so many people had questions about how the media would cover particular stories, whether it be a local paper in the Detroit area where we live or something they saw on national news. And so V and I decided to dive into this. And, of course, I've written books about this, and V writes regularly on it. And she's also a professional business coach and a life coach and a Christian coach, and knows a lot about people and motivation and can help us in a lot of areas. We'll also give her website as well before the end of this segment. So, V, right now I want to dive into this study, which is like deja vu all over again with, remember, the Summer of Love for the mayor of Seattle? It's going to be the Summer of Love in 2020. So this is a study that our friends at Media Research Center did, and it can be found at newsbusters.org and also mrc.org. And I sent it to you earlier. CNN, MSNBC overwhelmingly call riots peaceful as LA burns. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's one thing for the media to be biased, but then the same media were running the sound bites of the mayor of Los Angeles talking about implementing a curfew and then pulling the curfew back. But she also said earlier this week that she's going to reinstitute the curfew if violence kicks up again. You have one of the DAs from Los Angeles talking about all the crime and all the people they've arrested. So they're running those sound bites and those statements, but at the same time saying it's peaceful. So let me just read what MRC found. Left-wing cable networks CNN and MSNBC have spent the past week serving as public relations officials for the anti-ICE riots in Los Angeles. Both networks have almost exclusively described the turmoil as peaceful, while taking great pains to downplay and outright dismiss the chaos and the violence. MRC analysts looking at coverage on CNN and MSNBC from June 7th through the 11th that aired between 5 a.m. and noon Eastern Time, finding 211 instances in which anchors, guests, or reporters described the riots in LA as peaceful.
Yeah.
211. 211.
So there's a couple things going on here, T. This is the same thing where they've got, one person writing the narrative and sending it out to everybody. I mean, we see this happen. It's the same headline, same words. I mean, over and over again with these stories, they're just parroting each other. It's like somebody sets the tone and everybody follows, right? And then secondly, people, they haven't learned anything. The American people are so tired of being told that they're not seeing what they're seeing, and so they're standing in front of these burning buildings and these rioting and people, all this violence, and they're saying, well, it's mostly peaceful. Well, it's mostly peaceful. Then ask yourself, why does there have to be a curfew? I mean, that's
exactly what I said.
Yourself.
What do you need a curfew for? But they're running those same sound bites, and then they go to the reporter live in the field with the burning building in the background saying it's peaceful. It's like...
Yeah. And then they act like the American people are stupid, and that's where you lose trust. I mean, people don't like to be lied to. And you're lying to them right in front of their face. They're seeing one thing and hearing you say something else. I mean, that's where they're tuning you off. And they're like, you know what? I can't trust you. I don't believe you. I mean, it goes back to Terry Moran when he says, oh, we don't need objectivity. Okay, then if all I'm going to get is your opinion, Terry Moran, I don't want to watch you. You know what I mean? I just want the facts. I want the stories. I don't want to know what you think about it. And that's another thing. You may think this is peaceful, but ask the people living in it. Why don't you go ask them, would they describe this as peaceful? Go ask the people in the neighborhood. That's what a good reporter would be doing.
Well, it's hypocritical on the one end to sit there and still, after January 6th, and I'm not saying that wasn't a problem and there weren't issues there, obviously, but to really just stretch out January 6th as the end of the world when it was actually happening. And then looking at this situation in 2020 with the so-called Summer of Love and the deaths and the damage and the destruction and towns that have still not recovered and people who lost lives and businesses over that. And now you look at what happened in LA and around the country, and then to sit there and to try to play this down. Why is one riot not a huge, like, end of the world, it's the apocalypse, and then you come to other riots where people involved are mostly leaning to the left, but it's mostly peaceful?
Yeah, because it's all hypocrisy and it's all an agenda. I mean, it was the same thing when they were destroying Chicago, where businesses, many have not recovered since then, and the mayor says, oh, well, let them express themselves. Really? So they have to destroy businesses as a way of expressing themselves, destroy people's livelihoods as a way of expressing themselves, loot their businesses and burn them down and, throw rocks in their windows. I mean, this is their livelihood, their investment. So, so it's complete hypocrisy, T. I mean, January 6th was a huge riot, end of the world. They still talk about it. But what happened all over the country in Seattle and Chicago and L.A. during 2020, well, that was no big deal. They had to express themselves because they were upset. I mean, it's all justification. And the American people watch this and they wonder why. This is why their inability to be introspective. You wonder why that people don't trust you anymore. You wonder why people are tuning you out. And there's so much more competition today, T. There's so many other places to get news sources. I'm not beholden to one outlet. It's not what it was like when we were growing up where you only had 3 channels. It's a different world today. So people have options. They don't have to tune you in.
We were talking about this. You went up to there's a conference that takes place every year in Michigan called the Mackinac Conference, and it's when community leaders and business owners and politicians from across Michigan get together and discuss all sorts of things, and the governor's there and other elected officials. And you were telling me how, and I remember when I first covered that, this was years ago, and this is in between jobs, and I was actually meeting, I had a client, a PR client who was there, and he was one of the presenters, so I went up, kind of like what you do with your clients, and went up and with him and his presentation. But I can remember all the media there. There was, the WJR, which is News Talk 760, where you and I both worked, and there were other and they had a whole newsroom where the radio reporters and the TV reporters were doing interviews. They were interviewing business leaders and turning around voicers and raps, as we say in the biz, like every hour, remember? And then you said it was so different when you went there this year. Tell us about that.
It was completely different. I mean, back in the day, I mean, it's called Media Row now, where they take half the dining room of the Grand Hotel and turn it into all media. And then they have another room where other reporters are doing their stories. It was nothing compared to what we have experienced in the past. It was so different. And there was a couple stations that weren't even there that normally would be there. You didn't see TV doing live shots like they used to. It was mostly podcasters. And that's another thing. People have so many different places to go for information. For these media outlets to think that they can continue doing what they're doing and not lose fans or viewership or readers is just really kind of ignorant on their part. So, the dynamics of the media have changed, and they've been changing over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And that's why I tell my clients, you've got to be your own newsroom. You've got to create your own newsroom using your own platforms. You can't depend on earned media like you did 15, 20 years ago. It's not the same environment anymore. And consumers have many more options for information than they did, 15, 20 years ago. So, it's changed a lot. The media environment has changed tremendously.
Even if, let's say, we put aside the obvious bias of NPR and PBS, well, it's not necessary to fund them anymore because remember, one of the reasons that they decided to fund PBS and NPR so long ago was because they wanted to give another option to people because there were so few outlets available when you and I were growing up. And, in Detroit, what do we have? CBS, NBC, ABC, Channel 50. And then we had the radio stations, WXYZ Radio, WJR, WWJ, the CBS affiliate, which is still a CBS affiliate, a handful of places that were doing the news on a regular basis and really doing news back then. Now we have, as you said, so many different, not just news outlets in terms of cable outlets and, different online outlets, but we have all these podcasters that are getting huge followings. And so there's no reason to fund. Why do we need, and PBS does their own fundraising. So why do we need to be paying our tax dollars when all they're going to be doing is cranking out copy and statements similar to what Terry Moran did, right?
Exactly. And have an opinion opposed to just covering the news. And T, on that point, podcasters, I mean, we know just looking at this last campaign that Barron Trump strategically put his dad in front of certain podcasters, which really influenced the young voters. So the young voters it's showing the statistics and the data are showing these young voters are not even watching traditional media. They're listening to certain podcasters, and they have their own following. And so you have a whole generation of people that are tuning you out because they don't want your opinion. They want to hear what's really going on. You know what I mean? They want to hear real interviews without biased opinion in them. So they have all these other options out there, but yet they continue down the same road. And you're right. Why are we funding these outlets that have an agenda? Our taxpayer dollars with an agenda. So it's gonna be interesting to see how many Americans are going to continue to support that, or if they're going to,
They shouldn't unless they have a wake-up call and actually do their jobs. The same thing for anybody else who thinks that they can go out there and just give their opinion. And it was amazing to me when the head of NPR was before Congress, and when Congressman Jordan asked her if she was aware that there was not one Republican in her newsroom. And she kind of said, well, I didn't know that. Well, she knew it. She knows it very well.
Oh, how do you know? Okay, first of all, you look dumb either way. If you knew it and didn't do anything about it, it was your biased agenda. If you didn't know it, then you're not really good at what you do because you should know who's in your newsroom.
Yeah, exactly. All right, switching gears a little bit, but this sort of on the same line in terms of agendas. So we were all kind of weighing in this morning, our T-Team membership, all of us kind of comment, Patty Armstrong, Gal Caniglio, you, me, Mercy, kind of weigh in on issues. And we were talking about the movie Nonas. And when I first heard about it, now I did like it. Overall, I thought it was good, but I was so disappointed that they had to get the gay agenda in there. So it's a movie on Netflix. It's based on a true story about a man who opened a restaurant, which is still operating. I think it's in Brooklyn. And he took his mother's recipes.
Staten Island.
Yeah, Staten Island. You're right, Staten Island. And then he took his mother's recipes, his Italian mom's recipes, and the recipes of other grandmothers, and had them come in, and they cook. It's not open every, but they are They're very busy. They're open a limited time. And so they made a movie out of this very sweet story. And what I loved about it is being from the East Coast and being an Italian American and growing up with the recipes of my nonas and being in the kitchens. And I really was looking forward to seeing it. Of course, now living here part-time in Italy. And I do like Vince Vaughn. I think he's a good actor and he's also conservative. So I was thinking it was going to be just fine. And then, of course, there's that scene where they have to get and we only have about 2 minutes left, but they have to get a lesbian nun in there. I mean, come on, V. What was the point of that? Really?
I was really disappointed in that. I loved the movie overall, and I was really pleasantly surprised through about an hour into it. I'm like, God, this is no swear words, no, overtly, no nudity, no, explicit sex scenes. It was just so nice, and it reminded me of my life. Even though I'm not Italian, I'm Chaldean, so we have the same thing. Our grandma's in the kitchen cooking our meals. So I loved it up in the scene. I'm like, not only did they have to get that in there, but they had to make it a nun. And it's like, okay, now you have to take a jab at the Catholic faith too, And so, that was just disappointing. It was about a minute in the film, but it's like, was that even necessary? You know what I mean?
Right.
In the overall
What was the
film.
point?
Yeah.
What was the point?
Yeah.
The only point was to get an agenda in there to make sure they represented, they wanted to make sure that maybe they felt had to be fair to everybody. But why? Had nothing to do with the subject line at all.
Nothing to do with the storyline. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, storyline.
Yeah. I was so excited halfway in. I'm like, oh, here we go. But it's sad because there's so many wonderful stories out there. And so many beautiful movies that you could produce without pushing a particular agenda. And you see this in movies all the time. I mean, Ronnie and I were just talking about it. Can we just watch a decent television series? We like true crime or like crime series or cop series, but every one of them has to have something explicit and something raunchy. It's like, why? Why do you have to go down this road? Can you just tell the story and let us enjoy the drama we're following?
Yeah. Great discussion, V. Have a great show today, sweetheart. And we look forward to having you back on for more Fact Check Fridays with T and V. It is a Friday. It's June 20th. You're listening to EWTN. We'll let you know what's coming up in the second hour in just about 2 minutes. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in to a Friday edition of a Catholic Connection Coast to Coast and around the globe from the one, the only EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Coming up on hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra. Very excited to dive more deeply into this very powerful statement from the smartest man in the world. And shows you how smart he is because he's saying Jesus is God. There you go. Bingo. We're going to talk about that. I found a really cool video. We're going to play the audio for you with an explanation a little bit more about his new ministry, basically, what he's doing in terms of his newfound faith. To me, it's just such encouragement. And we'll continue along that line of conversation because despite all the bad news out there, I know there's a lot of it. And yes, I know we certainly have issues in the faith, in Christianity, in the church, of course, because we're all human and we live in a fallen world. There are still so many people that are seeking God and that are searching, as Pope Leo mentioned in his audience message and also in his message to the young people in Chicago last weekend. And there's proof of that all over the world with England, France, all of these different places, thousands upon thousands of people, young people coming into the church in places where the faith is being attacked even much more than it is here. And so for that discussion, I'm bringing on a friend of mine, and she has an incredible background in evangelization work. She worked for the Archdiocese of Detroit for many years. She also worked with Father John Mercado, and she's always been a member of my home parish, and we're blessed to have her. And she works directly with the OCIA candidates. We had more than a dozen people coming into the church. So Patty Chase, along with one of the new converts, is going to be joining us to talk about that article. Remember in the Free Press, It's Cool to Be Catholic? We'll discuss on a Friday. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tamio, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tamio.
And it's a Friday morning, continuing our program on a Friday, June 20th, first day of summer. Happy summer. I absolutely love this time of year. I hope you do too, and I hope you enjoy our programming, and we thank you for tuning in. And if you're listening on either the app or EWTN Radio Extra. However you're listening, we are glad you are. EWTN.com for all the great information. And if you heard the first hour of the program, you know that EWTN is going to do, as we always do, a stellar job of keeping you up to date on all that's happening in the church, not only in the U.S., but around the world. And I'm telling you, as Doug mentioned in the first part of the program, Doug Keck, so many incredible events going on related to Corpus Christi weekend. So please stay tuned. They'll have masses from Washington, masses from the shrine. They'll have special programs on the Eucharist all weekend long. And I also want to encourage you to take a look later this weekend, to my Facebook page, because I'm going to be doing some videos of what's happening here in Italy for Corpus Christi, our little town in central Italy, one of many doing a beautiful Eucharistic procession. And so I'll be taking some videos and sharing those on Facebook, and also encouraging you to sign up, as literally thousands of people have signed up already, for our Saints in Italy series based on my book, Italy, Shrines and Wonders. It's free. It's a great way to have your own personal pilgrimage to Italy without ever leaving home or even your office. Saints in Italy is the title, and you can go to EWTN.com/Saints in Italy. We have a study guide, we have reflection questions, and each video is about a particular saint or a very important event. And speaking of, you might want to sign up for it today, because there's this whole segment on the Eucharistic miracle of Corpus Christi, which we're celebrating this weekend, which, of course, happened in Bolsena in Lazio, northern Lazio. And then a half hour north of there is Orvieto, where the Pope was in the 13th century when this miracle occurred. And that's why the miracle is still housed in this beautiful cathedral of Orvieto in Umbria, in the region of Umbria. So that is EWTN.com/Saints in Italy. All right, coming up in the program after the news, we are going to be talking about this amazing statement. It's going to be our lead story, by the way, in the news this morning, as it was last hour, of this young scientist, this brilliant young man from South Korea, who proclaimed his faith in Jesus Christ. 14 million views, his post on Facebook, and that was as of yesterday. It's probably even much more now. So the video that Richard and I found, my producer Richard, we're going to play the audio for you. It dives more deeply. It's from a Good News Gospel channel on YouTube. And the voiceover is describing who this young man is, what he has to say about faith, what he intends to do with his newfound faith. And it's just so encouraging. It's something that I want to pick up on in relationship to Father Mitch and what he talked about yesterday on the program when we were discussing the Supreme Court decision regarding the whole transgender situation in Tennessee, how God does not work against himself. Morality and science don't butt heads. They work and flow naturally. And we see this in so many ways, and we'll discuss that as well. And if you're a smart person, and this man obviously is considered the most intelligent man in the world based on his IQ, you see that. It makes sense if you're willing to face it and you have the humility to do so. So I'm looking forward to discussing that as well in 2 cents. And then, as I mentioned, talking about the growth of the Catholic faith and reflecting on a beautiful article that was done by the Free Press all about how Catholic became cool. And we're going to be interviewing an expert in evangelization from my home parish, Patty Chase, along with one of our new converts from St. Joan of Arc in the Archdiocese of Detroit. So that's coming up this morning on a Friday morning edition, second hour of Catholic Connection. First, though, the weather for you for the first weekend of summer. Severe thunderstorms likely today across the northern plains and into the upper Mississippi Valley. Gusty winds and dry conditions resulting in widespread critical fire weather through tomorrow across parts of the Four Corners region and Great Basin. A significant and dangerous heat wave expanding from the central part of the country into the eastern part of the country through the weekend and even through much of next week. So just keep that in mind and make sure you stay well hydrated and make sure you wear that sunscreen. Okay, it is 4 minutes past the hour. It is a Friday. We appreciate you here on EWTN. It is now time for the news on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Well, as we mentioned, we'll be talking about this in the next segment after the news. The man with the highest reported IQ in the world gaining international attention after publicly proclaiming his Christianity on social media. On June 17th, South Korean scientist Young Hoon Kim, who claims he has an IQ of 276, the highest IQ ever recorded, posting on X, "As the world's highest IQ record holder, I believe that Jesus Christ is God, the way, the truth, and the life." His post receiving 14 million views and 250,000 likes as of yesterday. His claim to being the world's highest IQ holder has been verified by a number of organizations, including Mensa and World Memory Championships and others. Kim, responding to the tremendous popularity of his original post, said in another post yesterday, "He will use this opportunity to lead many souls to God. Amen. Christ is my logic," Kim 36 said in another response to someone who commented on X. Now, the Catholic Church, of course, teaches that God's existence can be known through reason alone. As stated in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 36, God, the first principle and the last end of all things, can be known with certainty from the created world by the natural light of human reason. This is what Father Mitch was alluding to in our discussion yesterday. The post received, again, 14 million views. That was as of yesterday. I'm sure it's even above that now. Kim, by the way, founder and CEO of NeuroStory, an organization dedicated to finding AI-powered brain health solutions, and backed by the South Korean government. In other news this morning, speaking of science and God, Pope Leo XIV encouraging young astronomy students at the Vatican to be generous in sharing what you learn and what you experience as best you can and however you can. Surely, he told them, this must be an exciting time to be an astronomer. The students gathering as part of a month-long astronomy and astrophysics summer school program hosted by the Vatican Observatory. The biannual summer program is taking place at the observatory's headquarters in Castel Gandolfo, south of Rome, where students come from across the globe to take part. The Vatican Observatory only accepting a small group of students in their final year of undergraduate studies or first year of graduate school. In other news this morning, on the East Coast, and they're still experiencing some rough weather, as we just heard in the weather forecast, Andrew Whitman tells us yesterday's storms that swept through the East Coast did some damage, and not just to trees and power lines.
2 people were struck by lightning Thursday afternoon in Manhattan as the storm blew through. The first person was hit around 3:40 Thursday afternoon in East Harlem, happened at East 101st Street and 5th Avenue. That person was hospitalized. There's no word on their condition. 5 minutes later at 3:45, a 15-year-old boy was hit by lightning in Central Park at 100th Street and the East Drive. Lightning hit a tree, then the teen. He was also hospitalized. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
The White House says the president has a time frame for when he will make his decision about possible U.S. intervention in the Iranian-Israel conflict.
I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks."
That's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying if there is a chance for diplomacy, the president will grab it. There has been widespread speculation whether the president will authorize the use of bunker-busting bombs to take out Iranian nuke facilities. The president has long maintained Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And a rescue operation flight carrying evacuated Jewish Americans from Israel landed safely in Miami. Judy Elias with Heroes to Heroes was in the middle of a 10-day mission with a group of 33 veterans who had to go to the Jordanian border to get a flight out.
It was a pretty harrowing experience. My major concern was getting all of my veterans home safely.
She says it was indeed chaotic, but they did manage to make it onto a plane after a 60-hour travel ordeal. The group had been in shelter since sirens began sounding last Tuesday amid Iranian strikes. Governor Ron DeSantis, meanwhile, says he's also helping other Florida residents make way to the United States from the Middle East. Tammy Trujillo tells us there's a federal appeals court now that's ruling in favor of the Trump administration regarding the deployment of the California National Guard.
The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says the president is within his rights to deploy troops amid protests in Southern California over immigration raids. The ruling by the 3-judge panel allows nearly 4,000 National Guard troops to remain deployed in Los Angeles. Governor Newsom sued the president over his decision to deploy the California Guard. Last week, a federal judge agreed with Newsom and ruled that Trump's actions were illegal. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
The White House says sanctuary cities, meanwhile, will be increasingly targeted by ICE. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt again saying President Trump is securing the homeland, noting not a single illegal alien was released into the U.S. last month. She added Homeland Security is ramping up efforts to arrest and deport the millions of illegal aliens that former President Biden let in. There were initial anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles when the immigration operations began, but they have since died down. Local authorities in Minneapolis say they want to prosecute the man accused of shooting 2 Minnesota lawmakers before the feds do so. Vance Belcher was charged by both offices earlier this week for the murder of House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark. He's also accused of shooting State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. Local attorney Mary Moriarty asking the DOJ to let her office first pursue murder charges. Acting U.S. Attorney John Thompson said it's his expectation the federal case, though, will go first. The New York Police Department says the alleged arsonist who firebombed 11 cop cars in Brooklyn last week is an anti-Israel agitator with a grudge against police. Jackie Lodgkin McCrae is wanted in connection with causing $800,000 in damage to police vehicles. They say the 21-year-old has been linked to the Free Palestine movement and has been arrested previously for resisting arrest during several anti-Israel protests, and for burning flags outside the Israeli consulate in New York. He's also wanted for criminal mischief at Columbia University last year. And just over a month after Pope Leo became the first U.S.-born pontiff in history of the Catholic Church, a new poll shows that American Catholics are feeling very excited about their new religious leader. About 2/3 of American Catholics have a very or somewhat favorable view of Pope Leo, according to the new survey from the Associated Press Center for Public Affairs Research, while about 3 in 10 say they don't know enough yet to have an opinion. But very few Catholics, though, less than 1 in 10, view him negatively. The Pope, meanwhile, continuing to prove just how big of a White Sox fan he is. Pope Leo XIV spotted taking part in a White Sox chant earlier this week during the papal audience as he rode through St. Peter's Square in the Pope-mobile.
White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox! White Sox!
The Chicago native is a confirmed fan of the Southsiders. The Archdiocese of Chicago, meanwhile, holding a special celebration for him this past weekend at the home field of the White Sox in Chicago. Finally, in our news segment, almost 13 minutes past the hour on a Friday morning, June 20th. Today, again, is the first day of summer. The summer solstice falls on June 20th in the U.S. and on the 21st in Europe. That's when the Earth achieves its maximum tilt toward the sun, making it the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere and kicking off the official start of summer. The closer you get to the North Pole, the more sunlight you will get in the evening hours. Residents, for example, in Fairbanks, Alaska, for instance, will see nearly 22 hours of daylight today. In the Southern Hemisphere, meanwhile, today marks the winter solstice, making it the shortest day of the year. We're glad you're with us. It's the second hour of Catholic Connection. We'll be right back to talk about the smartest man in the world, proving just how smart he is because he's expressing his faith in Jesus. Yes. We'll be right back. Couldn't wait to talk about this with you this morning on Catholic Connection on June 20th in our 2 cents segment, T's 2 cents, sharing the story about this young man in South Korea, the smartest man in the world according to his IQ, 276. Wow. Expressing his belief in God. Jesus Christ is Lord, the way, the truth, and the life. He put a post on X yesterday, or actually on June 17th. Now it's up to, I think, over 14 million views. That was as of yesterday, but as I said in the news story earlier, at the top of the hour, it's probably, I don't know, who knows, but I have to take a look. I haven't checked it today yet, but I'm sure it's millions of more people. This is so important. Richard and I were just talking during the break, and Father Mitch and I discussed this yesterday on our Cultural Connections section. How many times did we hear, religion and science, they can't mix, they collide, the opposite. But it's not. If God is the scientist, if God is the creator of all things, if he has made us in his image and likeness, what he says about the human person, the dignity of the human person, what he has created is not going to conflict against itself. And we see this, and this is what Father Mitch said so brilliantly yesterday here on Catholic Connection. We were looking at, thanks be to God, that good decision that came down from the Supreme Court earlier this week, supporting the ban in Tennessee, a ban against mutilating surgeries of children. Now, there is so much evidence to show just how problematic, in addition to the fact, not to be very blunt, but cutting off very healthy body parts that are not diseased in any way on these young children and making them lifelong patients. In addition to that, which is obviously, as I said, problematic hugely, there is more and more evidence to show, as you heard the testimony of Chloe Cole yesterday, a detransitioner, that them trying to go through with that and change their sex, which they can't do, right? It doesn't work because we're not designed that way. Now, if someone truly has gender dysphoria, there is a way to get that treated. And the vast majority of people, especially young people who feel that way, it's found that they are going through a phase that may have been caused by some sort of psychological or physical trauma, and that they can work through it. It doesn't mean we shun these people who truly have this issue. We help them, but we give them the proper help. Science, nature, morality don't conflict. It's just like with all this over the past 50, 60 years, right? Even longer now. Over-sexualized culture. Sleep with anybody you want. Do whatever you want. Take these pills. Everything's going to be fine. But we have an epidemic of loneliness. We have STDs and STIs that are still at epidemic proportions. Why? Because we're not meant to sleep around with people. It's not healthy, psychologically and especially not physically. Now, before we play this video clip, I want to run a commercial, and it just sticks in my head, maybe because I spent so much time in TV. But remember growing up, there was this commercial, I think it was about parquet, but how you don't fool Mother Nature. Richard's going to roll that commercial right now.
Hello, my jolly jonquils. Hello, daisies. Why, you're not my daisy.
Right, Mother Nature. They're new chiffonware bowls. Taste.
It's my sweet, creamy butter.
Nope, that's chiffon margarine.
Chiffon margarine? Oh, no, it's my butter, all right.
Chiffon fooled even you, Mother Nature.
It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. If you think it's
It's
butter,
a funny commercial,
but it's not. It's chiffon.
It's chiffon. I always forget that it's chiffon and not parquet, but if you looked at that commercial, you can find it on YouTube. It's all over the place. You see the animals running or hiding their eyes, covering their heads and everything. But the point is, right, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. When you try to act differently against who we are in nature, it doesn't work. That's why science and morality don't conflict. And if you're really smart and if you're humble enough, you're going to come to that conclusion, as has the smartest man in the world. So here is the clip of the person who is considered the smartest man in the world with an IQ of 276, a South Korean scientist, Young-hoon Kim. This is a video explaining his faith in Jesus Christ as Lord. Take a listen.
Here's something you don't hear every day. The man recognized as having the world's highest IQ has boldly declared that Jesus Christ is God. His name is Young-hoon Kim, a South Korean scientist and founder of NeuroStory, a company focused on AI and brain health. He's been acknowledged by major global IQ groups, including Mensa, World Genius Directory, and even the World Memory Championships, for having an IQ of 276, which is currently believed to be the highest in the world. On June 17th, he took to X, formerly known as Twitter, and posted this bold statement. As the world's highest IQ record holder, I believe that Jesus Christ is God, the way and the truth and the life. He followed that up with another line that turned heads. Christ is my logic. That single post exploded. Over 14 million views and more than 250,000 likes within just a couple of days. But he didn't stop there. Kim said he wants to use this opportunity to lead people to God. According to him, Jesus isn't just a spiritual figure. He is the embodiment of truth and reason. What's even more fascinating is how he's combining science and faith. Earlier this year, Kim said that belief in life after death is actually consistent with quantum physics. He believes that human consciousness is quantum information, something that doesn't just vanish when we die. In his words, consciousness is like data in the cloud. It might leave the brain, but it doesn't disappear. He also emphasized that consciousness is not produced by the brain alone, but exists independently, hinting at a kind of design that points back to God. In short, here's a man at the top of the intellectual ladder, scientist, entrepreneur, and record-breaking genius, openly confessing faith in Jesus Christ. Not just emotionally, but logically. He calls Jesus the way, the truth, and the life, and says that logic itself finds its foundation in Christ.
Hello everyone, this is Highest IQ Man Young-Hoon Kim. In this video, I would like to declare the most important thing, the most important statement. I have two things now. First, God exists. Second, we are in a simulation, 100% I believe. As mentioned before, assuming that AI or AGI, ASI continue to advance, just like we will be able to create highly advanced virtual realities, then I consider it is likely that we ourselves exist within a simulation created by a higher dimensional being. With this approach, we will be able to understand the concept of ultimate reality, or God.
In a world where faith and science are often seen as enemies, Young-Hoon Kim stands in the middle and says both point to Jesus Christ. So there you have it, the man with the highest IQ in the world publicly declaring that Jesus Christ is God, and not just as a matter of belief, but as a matter of logic. He is not ashamed of the gospel, and neither should we be. Jesus Christ is the true God. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And yes, he is coming soon. Are you ready to meet him?
Wow. Again, paragraph 36 of the Catechism of the Catholic Church states, God, the beginning and end of all things, can be known with certainty through the natural light of human reason by observing the created world. The capacity to know God through reason is rooted in humanity's creation in God's image. It's so powerful. And I know personally that one of the reasons I came back to the church was I realized the reasoning of my faith. I did some research. I looked at the teachings of the church. I was living the life that the world said was supposed to make you so happy, and yet I was very unhappy. I had everything the world said was important. I had a successful job. I had nice clothes. I had a nice house, and my husband and I were doing very well. And yet, both of us were still struggling because we didn't have God. And so we slowly made our way back to the church and looked into the teachings of the church. And everything made sense. Because it's God. He is the beginning, the be-all and end-all, the great I am, the Alpha and the Omega. And the smartest man in the world affirms it. So there you go. Thank you very much. We knew it, but it's nice to hear it from the smartest man in the world with an IQ of 276. There you go. Welcome back. A few weeks ago, I did a lot of discussion on the air about this really great article that was published on the Free Press, the FP.com. I find it's a very decent website. It's not Catholic. It's not Christian in general. It's a secular outlet, but there are many people that work there that left secular media for the very reason I left secular media, because of the extreme bias. They didn't feel they could freely do their jobs as journalists. And so they have a lot of really good pieces on there that make you think. And one in particular I thought was very well written and was very encouraging. How Catholicism Got Cool. It was published on June 4th, and the writer was Madeline Kearns, and she actually spent a lot of time in my home area in southeastern Michigan interviewing Oakland University students and others. And she did get it right in terms of Catholicism, and Catholicism is very cool, right? We know that. Well, more importantly, it is who we are as believers in Jesus Christ and the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. And so I wanted to expand on this and really talk about the church and why people are drawn to it. We have thousands of people that came into the church over Easter, And this was in places such as England and France that are being persecuted greatly. Any Christian there is being persecuted, but especially Catholics. And here in the United States, we saw many, many people also coming into the church, including in my Archdiocese of Detroit. We had some 2,000 people joining the Catholic Church. And in my home parish, St. Joan of Arc, in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, we had over a dozen people join the faith. And so we wanted to bring on Patty Chase, who works with OCIA. Now, Patty has an extensive background in evangelization, working with the Archdiocese of Detroit. Father John Mercado, she's done great things with our women's conference and the AOD and has been involved in the faith for many years. And we're so glad we have her working for us now at our parish, our home parish of St. Joan of Arc. And we also have one of our new Catholics with us, Markael Butler. So thanks to both of you. And Patty, first, let me go to you in terms of what was your reaction when you saw that article? Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. I read the article and I thought Catholicism has always been cool. That was my first reaction.
Right.
But to have it hit the secular media was something that my first reaction was, oh no, don't let it be trendy. Don't let it be cool. But the fact is that a headline like that draws people to read and to get curious about what do you mean about the Catholic Church? I thought the Catholic Church was nothing but a bunch of rules. Mm-hmm. And what we're finding is that people are really looking for meaning in their lives, and that's what the article brought out.
Yeah. And so, Markael, give us a little bit of your story. What drew you to the Catholic faith?
Yeah. Oh, hello. Thanks for having me on here. Appreciate that. For me, really, I grew up Baptist, and part of my life I really grew away from the church. Just didn't really go too much. Didn't really feel a need to go. And just kind of growing up in high school, I had my mentor, who was also my football coach, was a huge Catholic and also from the Grosse Pointe area. And we would always talk about it, and he, kind of fill me in and kind of would always direct me in life. And then when I went off to college, I had some buddies who were Catholic, and I would kind of join Mass with them here and there, but never really, felt like, oh, okay, I wanted to be Catholic. I would just kind of go here and there. But just over the course of years, ever since, graduated back in 2020 from undergrad, I've really just had this feeling I've always wanted to do OCIA, but always kind of there was an excuse to not do it, to not go. And finally, it just kind of hit me to really join and pursue it, because myself, I was even looking for purpose, my identity, and I think really that's what a lot of people like myself were looking for, and that's really what drew me into the church.
What was it, though, about Catholicism? Are there particular teachings? Obviously, I'm sure the Eucharist had a lot to do with it, but what was it in particular about the Catholic faith, as opposed to maybe going back to your Baptist roots or another church? What was it that drew you to Catholicism?
For me, I will say being Baptist, it was just always long. Being there all day for me, it just didn't sit right with me. And also, it was I wasn't really getting anything out of it. And when I went to the Catholic Church before I became Catholic myself, I was sitting there. It was just so much easier to take in, but also just, taking in everything from the history, the architects, just the whole tradition. I don't know, it just felt like I was really, everything was sinking in for me. And also it was just seeing the community and going to different churches and seeing how united it was, that I could go to literally any church and still really be a part of the Mass and the whole Catholic community. It was just so inviting also. And for me, that's really what drew me in and just still even draws me in even more.
Wow. That's beautiful. So, Patty, what's it like for you to hear these testimonies from people like Markael, who went through our OCIA with you, who are now participating in being able to receive Jesus on a regular basis? What does it mean to you to see this, and what's drawing people to the Catholic faith?
I absolutely love watching people grow in their relationship with Jesus. When I first met Markael, for example, he said, yeah, I want to do this. I've been thinking about this for a long time. He went to Loyola Law School in Chicago, which is a Catholic university, and had been searching. That's been pretty much characteristic with everybody that I've interviewed. And I've interviewed a lot of young people recently, just really saying, I want something. I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure it's Catholic, at this point. That was the original interview. But I just said, come and see. You don't have to make a commitment. And then to watch them grow together as a group, as a community, but growing in their own understanding and their relationship with Jesus to the point where they just want to burst by the time Easter comes along. But not just Easter and the sacraments, they want to keep going. So I look at each individual and say, wow, she's really grown. He's really grown. And it just brings me great joy and feeling like maybe I'm that liaison between that individual and bringing them to the greater church, but also sending them on mission.
Wow, that's incredible. We'll continue the conversation with our guests this morning, Patty Chase and Markael Butler. Markael just came into the Catholic Church over Easter, of course, and Patty Chase has been working with our OCIA candidates at St. Joan of Arc in St. Clair Shores in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Patty has a long history of working in the faith. She's an amazing leader in evangelization, working for the Archdiocese of Detroit for many years, and also with Father John Mercado on his rescue project. And I'm just so proud. Patty and I have been friends for many, many years, and she's been doing great things. And I'm just really proud of our faith. I was so excited to see this article. And Patty, I had the same feeling you did. I wanted it to be positive, not, just all glowing. Yes, I know we have our issues, but I wanted it to be accurate, and I was so thrilled that it was. We're talking about the article, How Catholicism Got Cool, and just the growth in the Catholic faith in general, and how so many people continue to search. As our Holy Father told the youth last week when he sent that video in Chicago, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee, as St. Augustine said. We'll be right back. A surge in the numbers of aspiring Catholics registering to join the church at Easter this year, and I'm quoting from the article from the Free Press, FP.com, on how Catholic got cool. 633 converts, for example, in the Diocese of Lansing, Michigan. As I mentioned, in our archdiocese where I'm from and where Deacon Dom serves as a deacon, 2,000 people came into the church. It's a huge number. Yes, the archdiocese is very big, but that's a lot of converts. We had over a dozen in our parish, St. Joan of Arc, in St. Clair Shores, and we're just so excited about that. We went to the Vigil Mass. It was amazing. Markael Butler was there, being welcomed to the church, and Patty Chase was there, head of OCIA, to work with all these wonderful people coming into the church. So, Markael, let me go back to you. You said something so beautiful, and my goodness, it just makes me so proud of our team at St. Joan of Arc in the Archdiocese of Detroit, but also the fact that you appreciate the Mass so much, because sometimes I always say, as Catholics, as cradle Catholics, are sometimes the spoiled kids on the block. We don't realize what we have and we take it for granted, and we don't take advantage of the sacraments, and there are too many Catholics that still don't go to Mass. But share with our listeners what you told me during the break about the Mass and what it means to you.
Yeah, like I said, I really just walked away from this whole process with a renewed spirit. For me, going to Mass on Sunday, it's just too long now, waiting for the next Sunday to come around to go to the next Mass. It's really, for me, being able to go to adoration or being able to partake in the man's groups Thursday mornings has really just, and even weekday Masses, having those options to really go deeper into the Word and grow closer with Christ has been awesome for me, giving me a new, renewed spirit, and just created this fire within me to really learn more. And I've loved it, honestly.
So, Markael, do you think are you interested maybe in doing more in terms of maybe teaching a class or finding out more about the faith and maybe pursuing the diaconate or the priesthood? I mean, what's on your heart? What do you think?
I'm just really trying to let God work through me and just lead me to where He wants me to be. I've and trying to learn, study more. Right now I've really just come to the conclusion that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this moment, and wherever He wants me to go next, I'm going to go full steam ahead and just do whatever He asks for me. So whatever that might be, it's always, I always said, I heard this funny saying, it's like, if you want to make God laugh,
make plans.
Yeah. and so whatever He has planned, I'm full steam ahead.
Yeah. I could tell you, young man, I can't wait. I saw you at the Easter Vigil, but I didn't get a chance to meet you. And hopefully when Deacon Dom and I get back in July, we can meet and give you a big hug. But that happened to us. I mean, if you would have told me, and Patty knows because she's known us forever, but if you would have told me and Deacon Dom that he'd be a deacon and I'd be a Catholic talk show host 30 years ago, I would have told you, I don't know what you're smoking, but but I want some of it because it was not my plan to do what I'm doing now. To always be on the radio, yes, and TV, but not in this capacity. But I'm so glad that our lives turned out this way. So, Patty, this really is music to your ears in terms of hearing this young man just truly get it about the beauty of the faith.
It really is, and I was thinking as Markael was talking, and we shared a lot of the testimonies on Pentecost with those who have been through the process this year, and then those who are coming into the process as new participants. And one of the guys said was, I came into this because I want to be the same faith as my family. I want to be able to answer questions as they start receiving their sacraments. And he said, I came in for that reason, but with everything that's gone on through the year, I'm here because it's my relationship with God. It's my relationship with the church. And now I know that whatever I'm experiencing, I can bring that into my family. But it's not just doing it for somebody else. It's doing it for me. And that's one of the things that I've seen with each of the people who has gone through. And the same guy also lovingly called the young people. We had a group of late teens to mid-20s, and they all sat together at one table. And all but one were not baptized before the Easter Vigil. And he lovingly referred to them as the kiddie table. But what I'm seeing is this hunger for community, for authenticity, for growing in knowledge of the Scripture. And Markael just said it so beautifully. It's this thirst from week to week. It's not just a once and done.
Yeah. I want to go back to some of the quotes in this great article and get your reaction to it. It says, in an age of instability, people are attracted to ancient traditions. In an age of therapy speak, there's something appealing about the tough demands of Catholic doctrine. This is a quote from Dan Hitchens, a senior editor at First Things and former Catholic Herald editor. Catholicism also has a visual and aesthetic heritage, which is translated well into online culture. Catholics have turned out to be surprisingly good at using the internet to evangelize. And living here in Italy part-time, I mean, the beauty here, if you look at the saints, if you look at the churches, and Markael, you were talking about the tradition, it's so, and the history. The church goes back 2,000 years, and this is the only church that can be traced back to God himself, Jesus, finding the church on St. Peter. And so, Markael, what does the tradition and the history, you mentioned that earlier, and the beauty of the faith, it means something to you, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It truly does. It's kind of hard to put it in words, but I kind of describe it when you go to either a art museum, or something, and you see the artist's paintings, you kind of realize, wait, this person, existed. This person was real. And, you see this history, and it lets you know, all these people you read about, you talk about, they existed. They're real. And it kind of just helps you even grow a bit closer to, really come to that understanding and having that faith.
Yeah. You never get tired of it, too. There's always something, which you're probably finding already. And Patty, I know you know this, despite all the studying you've done, we've just really begun to scratch the surface. We could study the Catholic faith our whole lives. It's just endless, isn't it?
Yep, that's for sure. I remember standing in line for my master's for graduation, and the rector said to me, "So you feel like you're all done? You feel like you know it all?" And I said, "No, I feel like I just scratched the surface."
Yeah.
And I that's one of the beautiful things about people coming into the church, is that everyone who has come through the process says, "I want to know more. I want to keep going." And what a beautiful thing, because the Lord is ever deeper and calling us deeper.
We're talking with Patty Chase and Markael Butler. Markael is a new convert to Catholicism. Patty, of course, is a fellow parishioner of mine in Deacon Dom's at St. Joan of Arc in St. Clair Shores in the Archdiocese of Detroit. But as you heard, she's extremely well-versed and well-educated in the faith, studying at Sacred Heart Major Seminary, working in the Archdiocese of Detroit, and also, in addition to working in our parish, working closely with the one and the only Father John Mercado over the many years with his beautiful rescue project. So, Patty, with the converts that came into St. Joan or into Catholic Church this year, where do you see them in addition to Markael? They want to learn more, but where do you think in your heart they'll be going with the faith in terms of maybe signing up for a Bible study or getting more involved in the parish? What are you hearing? What are you feeling from the converts?
Well, we talked just before Pentecost, actually leading up to Pentecost, about the gifts that God has given each person, the charisms, and how those gifts are meant for others. They're meant for helping others so that we build the kingdom of God. And everyone, down to the last person, said, "I want to know what my gifts are so that I can use them." So it's exploring those gifts so that no matter which direction you're called in the church, whether it's doing something with hospitality or teaching or joining a prayer group, whatever that is, that you're in using your gifts, you're going to be an instrument of God in helping others to grow in their faith. Yeah. So it's developing that sense of mission. Like, I've got a purpose. It's not just me learning. It's I'm drawn to service. I'm drawn to teaching. I want to keep going with OCIA because I want to bring other people in. So whether it's evangelization or intercessory prayer, being able to use those things and to grow individually and to grow in holiness, but also to help others to grow.
Yeah, yeah. And Markael, pretty exciting for you to come into the church at a time when we have the first American Pope, and there's such an excitement around him. There's a new survey that came out, I had in my newscast earlier today, that he is very, very popular with Catholics and people around the world. He's very, to me, very real and very authentic, which is what Patty was talking about in the first place. What's your impression with the new Pope?
Yeah, I think the same thing. He's very real and very authentic. Even, I lived in Chicago for a while, and that was just huge, too, for him being from the area. It's like, wow, and the first American Pope, it's just during this time where there's just so much going on, so many temptations in life. It's just kind of awesome. It's refreshing to see Pope Leo up there, and I think it's going to be a huge inspiration, for Catholics all over the world, especially here in America, seeing the transformation of young individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Patty, I want to give you the last word in terms of maybe encouraging people who are listening in terms of helping to lead someone to the Catholic Church or back to the Catholic Church. What would you suggest?
Invite. Jesus said, "Come and see." And so often we say, we've got people in our families, or I wish someone would come to church. I wish this person would. Invite. It's often that personal invitation that's the first step. So we do this as an entire community, as an entire church, not just an individual coming who's seeking. It's that invitation that's so important. and then let the Lord do the rest, because he will.
And that's the thing I think some of us get stuck on is like, well, I have to have that right word or that right paragraph or that right, piece of information for that person to come back to Jesus or to come into a relationship with him. But it's the invitation. Father John always says, the gospel comes with the house key. Maybe invite them to Mass and then take them out to breakfast afterwards or something, right?
Right. Or to do even a fun thing in the parish. It doesn't have to be something that is, a high mass. That it's feeling like, okay, I feel safe coming in here. This feels like home. Being able to have that sense, and then once that door is opened, let the Lord enter, because he has a way. He has a way of opening the heart more and drawing everybody to him. He wants everybody. He wants each of us individually, and he's calling you individually, and he's calling us to invite others.
Amen.
Come and see.
Yes, come and see, as said so beautifully by Patty, and also Jesus. Jesus said it first, but Patty, I'll give you credit too. All right, thanks to both of you. God bless you. And tell Monsignor, the tall one, that T and Dom say hello. Patty, Chase, and Markael Butler from my parish in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, St. Joan of Arc. Very proud of these folks, especially Markael. Welcome home to Rome, my friend. We'll be right back. Well, I hope you were inspired. I know I have been by the new convert, Markael Butler, and my dear friend and fellow St. Joan of Arc parishioner in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, Patty Chase, who's been doing amazing work for years in the Archdiocese of Detroit. We're so happy she's working for us back home in her home parish. But what a story. I love the fact that Markael talked about Sunday can't come fast enough. Isn't that incredible? Wow. And so he gets to adoration. He gets to daily Mass. He gets to the men's group because he's always doing more to get to the next Sunday, right? And we can receive Jesus twice a day if we want to. That's what the church says. So you can go to daily Mass, and if you can't get to daily Mass, well, you can do a Bible study. You can listen to us. We'll take you there as well. So anyway, I thought it was very inspiring and very proud of my parish. Anyhow, on Monday, speaking of people coming into or back to the church, now, Matthew, of course, Swaim, is on vacation on Monday. He normally joins us on Monday for our highlights from the journey home. But the host, the son of the amazing Marcus Grody, John Mark Grody, is going to be with us to talk about the guests for a Monday, which will be June 23rd, as a matter of fact. And then Bill Donahue, another dynamic Catholic, will be with us to talk about all kinds of interesting topics and big news stories that are out there pertaining to the faith. So that is what's coming up on Monday. John Mark Grody and Bill Donahue, and of course, T's 2 cents and other good stuff as well. Have a blessed weekend. It's the first weekend of summer. Most importantly, it's Corpus Christi weekend, the body and blood of Jesus. Yay, Jesus! And good for the smartest man in the world who believes in Jesus too and says God is real. Amen, brother. Talk to you later.